Welcome back to What Is, where we take the things you see every day and strip them down to their bare components to see what makes them tick. Or in today's case, what makes them ring, buzz, and occasionally annoy your neighbors at 3 in the morning. Today we're asking, what is a guitar? Now on the surface, that's a stupid question. You know what a guitar is. It's the wooden thing with the hourglass figure and the strings. It's the thing that Jimmy Page played on a double neck. The thing that Taylor Swift used to write breakup anthems. And the thing your cousin Tyler swore he was going to master over the summer break, before he discovered TikTok, of course. But if we look closer, if we really peer into the sound hole, the guitar is a mechanical marvel of physics, a masterclass in evolution, and arguably the most culturally transformative object of the last century. It's a chordophone. That is the fancy scientific term for any musical instrument that makes sound by way of a vibrating string stretched between 2 points. Technically, a piano is a chordophone too, but you can't exactly strap a Steinway onto your back and hike into the woods to play Wonderwall by a campfire. Well, you could, but the logistics are a nightmare. Structurally, the guitar is a simple beast. You have the body, a hollow wooden box that acts as an amplifier. You have the neck, which is the long wooden plank where the magic happens. And you have the frets, those tiny metal strips that tell your fingers exactly where to go so you don't sound like a dying cat. And finally you have the strings, usually 6 of them, though if you're into Russian folk or Swedish metal, all bets are off. The physics are elegant. You pluck a string, the string vibrates. Those vibrations travel through the bridge, the little piece of wood holding the strings to the body, and into the top of the guitar, known as the soundboard. The soundboard vibrates, pushing the air inside the body out of the sound hole. It is quite literally a box that turns finger twitches into art. But where did this box come from? It didn't just fall out of the sky when Chuck Berry was born. No, the guitar has a family tree more complicated than a royal European dynasty. To find the ancestor of the guitar, we have to go back, way back, before the electric amp, before the Spanish flamenco, before even the medieval lute. We have to go back 5,000 years to the ancient Near East. Archaeologists have found carvings in Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt of people holding long-necked stringed instruments. These were the tambours. They look a bit like a cereal bowl on a stick. It wasn't a guitar yet, but it had the DNA. The word guitar itself is a linguistic traveller. It likely comes from the ancient Greek word kithara. Now the kithara was more of a lyre. Think of a small harp that you hold against your chest. But as the instrument migrated through the Roman Empire and into the hands of the Moors in North Africa, it began to change. By the time the Moors crossed into the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain, around the 8th century, they brought with them the oud. If you've ever seen an oud, it looks like a guitar that's been through a cartoonish accident. It has a deep, pear-shaped body and a neck that snaps back at a 90-degree angle at the top. Europeans looked at the oud and said, "That's cool, but what if we made it harder to play?" In Spain, the oud evolved into the vihuela. This is the moment the guitar really starts to look like itself. The vihuela had a flat back and an indented waist, that classic figure 8 shape. Why the waist? Well, it wasn't for aesthetics. Some historians argue it was to make the instrument easier to hold, while others suggest it was a carryover from bowed instruments like the violin, where the waist allows the bow to move without hitting the body. For a few hundred years, the guitar's ancestors lived in the shadow of the lute. The lute was the king of the Renaissance. It was an instrument of the aristocracy. The guitar, meanwhile, was the folk instrument. It was smaller, it had fewer strings, and it was played by the commoners. Imagine it's the year 1600. If you're a nobleman, you're listening to a complex 24-string lute composition. If you're at a tavern getting a pint of ale, someone is banging out a rhythm on a 4-course Baroque guitar. The guitar was the indie choice. It was portable, it was loud, and it was the instrument of the people. But then came the 19th century, and with it a man named Antonio de Torres. If you play the guitar today, you owe this man a Christmas card. Before Torres, guitars were small, narrow, and quiet. They were parlor instruments. Torres changed everything. In the 1850s, he increased the size of the body, thinned out the soundboard to make it more resonant, and perfected the fan bracing system inside the guitar. This allowed the instrument to project sound much further. He essentially invented the modern classical guitar. He gave it the proportions we see today. He turned it from a parlor toy into a concert hall-worthy powerhouse. But while Spain was perfecting the nylon string sound, something else was happening across the Atlantic. In America, the guitar was facing a problem. In the late 1800s, people were playing in large ensembles. Brass bands, mandolin orchestras, and early jazz groups. The Spanish-style guitar, with its gut strings, just wasn't loud enough. It was getting drowned out by the trombones. Enter Christian Friedrich Martin, a German immigrant. Martin started building guitars with steel strings instead of gut or nylon. Steel strings have a much higher tension, which means they are significantly louder, but that tension would snap a Spanish guitar like a twig. So Martin invented X-bracing, a sturdy internal wooden support system that could handle the pull of the steel. This was the birth of the American dreadnought. It was big, it was metallic, and it was loud. This was the sound of the frontier. But even steel strings weren't enough. By the 1930s, big bands were in full swing. If you were a guitar player in a jazz band, you were basically just a percussionist who happened to have strings. No one could hear your solos. The quest for volume led to the most radical shift in musical history, the electric guitar. It started with a frying pan. No, really. In 1931, George Beauchamp and Adolf Rickenbacker created the first commercially viable electric guitar, and it was nicknamed the frying pan because it was made of aluminium and had a long, skinny neck. It used an electromagnetic pickup to turn string vibrations into electrical signals that could be pumped through an amplifier. Suddenly the guitar wasn't the quietest instrument in the room, it was the loudest. In the 1940s and 50s, two titans emerged who would define the rest of our lives: Leo Fender and Les Paul. Leo Fender was a radio repairman who didn't even know how to play the guitar, but he was a genius of mass production. He created the Telecaster, the first mass-produced solid-body electric guitar. It was simple, it was rugged, and you could fix it with a screwdriver. It was the Model T of music. Then came Les Paul, a virtuoso guitarist and tinkerer, who wanted a guitar that could sustain a note forever. He teamed up with the Gibson Guitar Corporation to create the Les Paul model. Where Fender was sunny California and twang, Gibson was heavy mahogany and growl. These two designs, the Fender Stratocaster and the Gibson Les Paul, became the Excalibur and the Mjolnir of the 20th century. And that brings us to the most important part of the story, the role in culture. Why the guitar? Why not the accordion? Why didn't we have accordion heroes in the 1970s? Actually, let's be thankful for that. The guitar became the dominant cultural force because it is the ultimate democratic instrument. A piano is expensive and stays in the living room. A violin takes years of agonizing practice before you don't sound like a screeching owl. But a guitar? You can buy a cheap one at a pawn shop. You can learn 3 chords, G, C, and D, in just an afternoon. And with those 3 chords, you can play around 40% of all songs ever written. In the 1950s, the guitar became the symbol of teenage rebellion. When Elvis Presley swung a guitar over his shoulder, he wasn't just playing music. He was signaling a break from the big band era of his parents. The guitar was dangerous. It was suggestive. By the 1960s, it was the tool of the revolution. It was Bob Dylan at Newport going electric. It was Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock, coaxing sounds out of a Stratocaster that seemed to come from another dimension. Hendrix didn't just play the guitar, he dismantled the very idea of what a musical instrument could be. He used feedback, distortion, and whammy bars to turn a wooden plank into a psychedelic weapon. The guitar became the voice of the individual. In a world of massive corporations and sprawling governments, the image of a lone person with a guitar on their back became the universal shorthand for the truth teller. It's also surprisingly versatile. Think about it. The guitar is the backbone of heavy metal, where it's used to create wall-shaking riffs. It's the heart of flamenco, where it's a rhythmic, percussive force. It's the soul of blues, where it's used to mimic the human voice's cries and moans. It's the foundation of folk, country, jazz, and even modern pop. Even in the age of synthesizers and laptops, the guitar hasn't gone away. Every few years, someone writes an article titled, "Is the Guitar Dead?" And then a new kid from the suburbs uploads a video of themselves playing a technical masterpiece on a 7-string guitar. Or some indie band hits the charts with a catchy riff, and the cycle starts all over again. There's something tactile about the guitar that digital music can't replace. It's the feeling of the strings under your calloused fingertips. It's the way the wood vibrates against your ribs when you strike a low E chord. It's an intimate instrument. You embrace it to play it. The guitar is also the only instrument that has a dedicated air version. No one goes around playing air oboe or air cello in their bedroom, but everyone, and I mean everyone, has played air guitar. It's the universal language of this song rules. Fun fact, in the west coast Scottish town of Ayr, there is a music shop. Guess what it's called? Air Guitar. So what is a guitar? It's a 5,000-year-old traveler. It's a box of air. It's a collection of magnets and wire. It's a tool for the poet and a toy for the rock star. It's a way for a shy kid to find their voice and a way for a legend to speak to 100,000 people at once. It is quite possibly the most perfect machine humans have ever built for the sole purpose of feeling something. Whether it's the nylon strings of a Spanish master, or the steel string hum of a folk singer, or the distorted scream of a Marshall stack, the guitar remains our favorite way to bridge the gap between silence and soul. And hey, if you've got that old guitar sitting in the corner of your room gathering dust, the one you promised you'd learn to play 3 years ago, maybe today's the day you pick it up. Just maybe, warn the neighbors first if you're planning on being the next Hendrix. Thanks for watching this episode of What Is. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of 6 strings and wood, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. And if you want to know more about the what behind the why of the world around you, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. What should we cover next? The history of the light bulb? The physics of a skateboard? The mystery of why the G string on the guitar can never stay in tune? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep playing. See you in the next one.